Hello students, welcome to the lecture on recruitment and selection, and after the lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the recruitment meaning and definition, describe the selection meaning and definition, understand the interview. Let's start with a brief introduction of recruitment and selection. Recruitment is the process of generating a pool of capable people to apply for employment to an organization. Selection is the process by which managers and others use specific instruments to choose from a pool of applicants a person or persons more likely to succeed in the job given management goals and legal requirements. Recruitment and selection forms a core part of the central activities underlying human resource management, namely the acquisition, development and rewards of workers.
When we're thinking about the basics of human resource management, one of the first things is recruitment and selection, finding the right people and getting them on board. People who can come on board and understand your strategy and make it happen. So many good things flow from having the right people in your organization. They bring with them the right skills, they bring with them values that fit with your organization, and they really start to enthuse other people around them. And so many bad things, so many frustrations come from having the wrong people in your organization. They might be the wrong people because their values don't fit with the organization. They may be not suited to their role because of their skill set. They may have all the skills and the values, but they're just not motivated, and so they don't actually do anything. Recruitment and selection are so important that some people actually suggest you shouldn't come up with a strategy and then try and get people on board with it. You should just get good people first and then work out your strategy. Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, starts by saying, hey, what you need to do is just get good people into your organization, forget about your strategy, and once you've got that team, then work out your strategy from there, because the right people will know where to go. Either way, finding the right people needs to be very high on the agenda of your organization. And that's going to have a lot of implications. It's certainly going to mean that the recruitment and selection process needs to be very thorough and very careful. And it's going to involve some patience. Certainly, the more senior the role is, the more influential the role is, the more careful and patient you want to be. Not only do you want to have a couple of rounds of interviews with careful questions, you might want to think about some psychometric testing, and you also want to set up a few situations with this person, like drinks or dinner or golf, where you can actually relate to them in a broader context and see what really makes them tick. What are they like outside of the interview room to make sure that they are the right person for your organization? Sometimes all of this is going to mean long delays, because if you can't find the right person, you're almost always better off having no one do that role. It might be frustrating and disruptive to have no one doing the role, but it's going to be even more frustrating and disruptive to have the wrong person doing that role, especially for those higher level, more influential roles. Sometimes finding the right people can mean profound changes for your business. If you're having trouble attracting the right people to your city, you might choose to move cities. The reason that places like Silicon Valley have become the focal point for a whole industry is that it's easy to find the right people there. There's a whole ecosystem of universities and funding institutions and human resources that make the high-tech industry thrive. Whatever the implications are for your business, it's important to be as careful and as patient and as flexible as you can be to get the right people on board.
Let's now take a look on recruitment meaning and definition. According to Edwin B. Flippo, recruitment is the process of searching the candidates for employment and stimulating them to apply for jobs in the organization. It is the process to discover sources of manpower to meet the requirement of staffing schedule and to employ effective measures for attracting that manpower in adequate numbers to facilitate effective selection of an efficient working force. Let's now have a look on the sources of recruitment. First, we will discuss about the internal sources. Internal sources include the personnel already on the payroll of an organization. Among the internal sources may be included promotions, transfers, and response of employees to notified vacancy. Let us understand external sources. Advertisements. Advertising in newspapers, trade journals, and magazines is the most frequently used method. In order to be successful, an advertisement should be carefully written. If it is not properly written, it may not draw the right type of applicants, or it may attract too many applicants who are not qualified for the job. Employment exchanges. An employment exchange is an office that is set up for bringing together as quickly as possible candidates searching for employment and employers looking for prospective employees. Campus recruitment. Sometimes recruiters are sent to educational institutions where they meet the placement officer or the faculty members who recommend suitable candidates. This system is prevalent in the US, where campus recruitment is a major source. Unsolicited applicants. Unsolicited applicants are another source. Some candidates send in their applications without any invitation from the organization. Labor contractors. Many organizations employ labor contractors to hire workers. This method is usually resorted to when the work is of a temporary nature. Employee referrals. Friends and relatives of present employees are also a good source from which employees may be drawn. Field trips. An interviewing team makes trips to towns and cities which are known to contain the kinds of employees that are required. In this method of recruitment, carefully prepared brochures describing the organization and the job it offers are distributed to the candidates before the interviewer arrives. Let's know about selection meaning and its definition. Employee selection can range from a very simple process to a very complicated process depending on the firm hiring and the position. Recruitment has been described as the process of getting the potential employees who are willing to apply for the job. The process of selection leads to the employment of persons who possess the ability and the qualifications to perform on the posts which are vacant in an organization. The benefits of selection. Proper selection reduces the rate of absenteeism and labor turnover. Selection helps in appointing competent employees who perform better at work. Let's talk about the steps in selection procedure. Application blank. In a sense, the application blank is a highly structured interview in which the questions are standardized and determined in advance. The application blank provides preliminary information as well as aid in the interview by indicating areas of interest that may be useful for discussion. Initial interview of the candidate. Those who are selected for interviews on the basis of particulars furnished in the application blank are called for initial interview by the organizations. Preliminary interview becomes a necessity when a large number of candidates apply for a job. Employment tests. For further assessment of a candidate's nature and abilities, some tests are used in the selection process. Checking references. Reference checking requires the same use of skills as required by the interviewer and some amount of diplomacy. In many organizations, reference checking is taken as a matter of routine and treated casually or omitted entirely. Physical or medical examination. The next step is getting the candidates medically examined if there is a need. Quite often the candidates are told to get medically examined before reporting for duty. Medical examination is a part of the selection process for all suitable candidates in many organizations. Final interview and induction. The interviewer can describe the company and its policies, the duties and the responsibilities of the applicant, as well as the opportunities that are available to him for future promotion. The interviewer should, in fact, highlight the favorable aspects of the job. Aptitude tests. In addition to psychological analysis, employers can use aptitude tests designed to measure our capacity to perform in a particular way. They include aptitudes for manual dexterity and speed, mechanical ability, spatial awareness, reasoning, abstract reasoning, clerical work, and our numerical and verbal skills. This type of psychometric testing also has a place outside of candidate selection. Personality test. A personality test can be used to get a generalized overview of an individual's character. For example, their anxieties, whether they are sociable, assertive, extroverted or introverted. Their suitability for the job can be judged from their responses. It is questionable how much value personality testing has in offering personal career enlightenment. faking it. It is possible to cheat the personality psychometric test by putting answers that may not be our true responses, but instead are the replies we think show the employer that we have what it takes to excel in the role to which we are applying. Let's now take a look on the standards for selection tests. Reliability. Test scores should not vary widely under repeated conditions. If a test is administered to the same individual repeatedly, he should get approximately identical score. Reliability is the confidence that an indicator will measure the same thing every time. Validity. Validity is the extent to which an instrument measures what it intends to measure. In a typing test, validity measures a typist's speed and accuracy. To determine whether it really measures the speed and accuracy of a typist is to demonstrate its validity. The question if determining the validity of a selection test thus has a lot to do with later performance on the job. Qualified people. Tests require a high level of professional skills in their administration and interpretation. Professional technicians are needed for skilled judgmental interpretations of test scores. Preparation. A test should be well prepared. It should be easy to understand and simple to administer. Suitability. A test must fit the nature of the group on which it is applied. A written test comprising difficult words would be fruitless when it is administered on less educated workers. Usefulness. Exclusive reliance on any single test should be avoided since the results in such a case are likely to be criticized. To be useful, it is always better to use a battery of tests. Standardization. Norms for finalizing test scores should be established. There must be prescribed methods and procedures for administering the test and for scoring or interpreting it. Let us now understand about interview. Interview is a conversation that is between two or more people, and the people who ask questions are called interviewers, and the person who answers to those questions is called the interviewees. The objective of interview is to get information from interviewee to know about his skills and his capabilities. Analyzing. Through resume scanning is done and applicants are filtered based on their experience and skill set. Scheduled telephonic interview. Selected candidates are scheduled for a telephonic round of interview. Call for face-to-face interview. Create an interview schedule, allowing time to review and record notes between the interviews. Book the interviews and record them in the schedule. There can be multiple rounds of interviews, as well as also this round may have interview with senior managers as well. Probe and clarify. Once found technically sound, they are finally called for HR interview. The negotiation of a job offer can be done with HR at this stage. Reporting. What results were obtained? Information found, decisions, actions. Let's now have a look on the types of interview. Structured interview. A structured interview is called a standardized, patterned, directed or a guided interview. Structured interviews are pre-planned. They are accurate and precise. All the interviews will be uniform or the same. Therefore, there will be consistency and minimum bias in structured interviews. Unstructured interviews. These interviews are non-planned and therefore they are more flexible. Candidates are more relaxed in such interviews. They are encouraged to express themselves about different subjects based on their expectations, their motivations, their backgrounds, their interests, etc. Group interview. A group interview is similar to a group discussion. A topic is given to the group and they are asked to discuss it. The interviewer carefully watches the candidates. He tries to find out which candidate influences others, who clarifies issues, who summarizes the discussion, and who speaks effectively, etc. Exit interview. Exit interview is taken to find out why the employee is leaving the company. Exit interviews are taken to create a good image of the company in the minds of the employees who are leaving the company. Depth interview. This is a semi-structured interview. The candidate has to give detailed information about his background, his special interests, etc. He also has to give detailed information about his subject. Depth interview tries to find out if the candidate is an expert in his subject or not. Stress interview. The purpose of this interview is to find out how the candidate behaves in a stressful situation. The candidate who keeps his cool in a stressful situation is selected for the stressful job. Here the interviewer tries to create a stressful situation during the interview. Individual interview. This is a one-to-one interview. It is a verbal and visual interaction between two people, the interviewer and the candidate, for a particular purpose. Informal interview. This is an oral interview which can be arranged at any place. Different questions are asked to collect the required information from the candidate. It is a friendly interview. Formal interview. Formal interview is held in a more formal atmosphere. The interviewer asks pre-planned questions. Formal interview is also called a planned interview. Panel interview. Panel means a selection committee or an interview committee that is appointed for interviewing the candidates. The panel may include 3 or 5 members. They ask questions to the candidates about different aspects.
Cindy, one of the difficulties in preparing for an interview is that there are so many different ways that an employer can approach the interviewing process. There's different ways that they actually do the interviews. The common things are that almost everybody now is doing screening of applicants, and that's become more advanced over the last few years. A lot more employers are requiring drug testing. A lot of them are doing background checks now. It's not expensive to do because there's so much information available on the internet. Some employers are going so far as to even doing credit checks on employees. The screening process also can be done over the telephone. An employer can save a lot of time by doing a 10-minute interview over the phone with somebody rather than bringing somebody in. I've also noticed that some employers who post their applications on the internet as part of their online applications ask what are normally considered interviewing questions as part of the application, just to give them an idea of, is this somebody who has the basic knowledge of what it is that I'm going to need and want them to do.
And you know, it's so important now for employers to screen because of the number and volume of candidates that they have.
Oh yeah, there are so many qualified people out there that are looking for work. Employers have to find some way to identify which candidates are really the serious candidates that they want to consider, and this whole screening process is part of helping them do that. Once a person comes in for an interview, one of the processes that an employer might use is what's called a sequential interview. And that's where you might sit down with a human resources professional for about 10 minutes. They'll go over the very basics of the position, just kind of get an idea of, do you meet the minimum qualifications we're looking for? Do you seem to have the personality and the character that we're looking for to make this match? And if you do, then they might move you on then to the department head, who's going to go into a lot more detail about the job itself. The responsibilities that they're going to be looking to have this person fill, how your skills are going to match up with that. It's your opportunity then to tell them about the accomplishments you've had. Tell them some stories about some of the things that you've done in your previous positions that show that you're an excellent candidate for the position. And then after that person, if they deem that this is somebody who we should seriously consider, then they'll go on to another person. In a small company, it might be the owner of the company that's going to sit down and speak with that person to decide if this is who we're going to hire. In larger organizations, it might be an executive of the department, a superintendent, or another type of supervisor who is going to go into more depth and maybe do some other types of questions that that person may not have been exposed to during the initial part of the sequential interviewing process.
Sure, and sometimes as part of those sequential interviews, you might also have an interview with a potential peer, or if you're going to supervise people, it could even be potentially people who are going to be working for you. And sometimes organizations, instead of having you meet with each of these individuals separately, you will in fact meet them all at one time in the form of a panel or a team interview.
Oh yeah, that can be really intimidating.
It sure can.
Especially if you're not ready for it when you walk in and you see 4 or 5 people sitting there getting ready to interrogate you. But one of the ways that you can help yourself relax and show to the employers that you're prepared is to make sure that you give each one of them a copy of your resume. I suggest that a person take 10 copies of their resume with them because you don't know how many people may be talking to you during the course of the day, and you want to make sure that each one of those folks has their own copy of the resume. The other thing too is during those types of interviews, you want to make sure that you make eye contact with the person that asks you the question. And then when you get done asking or answering the question and you go on to embellish, then you want to make sure you make eye contact with the other folks in the room.
Yes, that's very important.
Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Recruitment and selection forms a core part of the central activities underlying human resource management, namely the acquisition, development, and the reward of workers. The process of interviewing and evaluating candidates for a specific job and selecting an individual for employment based on certain criteria. Recruitment has been described as the process of getting the potential employees who are willing to apply for the job. Aptitude or potential ability tests are widely used to measure the talent and the ability of a candidate to learn a new job or skill. In government and other quasi-government organizations, getting medically examined is a must before reporting for duty or at the time of reporting for duty.